We are live.
Hi, ADOS and allies. What is up? Chris and I are excited. Okay, let me just slow down because we're super excited about the ADOS conference. It feels like Christmas, family.
Yep.
We're going to be able to meet each other in the flesh. We've been doing this work forever, it feels like. Although the movement happened to us this year, we have been studying with the incomparable Yvette Carnell from the Breaking Brown Show and Antonio Moore from Tone Talks. I know for me since 2014. Well, let me tell you who I am. I don't see my name up there. I am the one and only fire powerhouse of the ADOS SoCal movement, Angela Nirvana, which means angel from heaven. Although I can stir some things up. Y'all already know what time it is. And then I've got my amazing brother, Chris Lodgson, who heads up the ADOS Sacramento team.
What's up? What's up? We are here.
We here. ADOS is here. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're super excited. We're Tamara for Georgia. We're hosting her show, co-hosting her show today because, you know, she's got a lot going on. She's such a powerful force to be reckoned with. Yeah. And it's just an honor and a privilege to be invited back for me a second time. Chris, I mean, he's family. He's just a regular.
I've been here. I think I started coming on the show. I feel like it was March. And you're right. Like Tamara, this is activism and organizing, like happening in real time, right? So,
right.
And this is one thing that's amazing about the movement, right? The ADOS movement is that people are getting engaged in politics and government and in the fight for reparations and for a Black agenda in all different kind of ways from all different kinds of, different lanes. And like you said, next week, some of those lanes will converge on Louisville, Kentucky for the inaugural ADOS conference, October 4th through 5th at Simmons College. It's an HBCU in Louisville, Kentucky. I think it's Kentucky's oldest private HBU or something to that effect. Definitely want to give a shout out to Dr. Kevin Cosby. He's been a super, super strong, force for the ADOS movement. If you're not familiar with Dr. Cosby, he's an amazing brother. I think Simmons College actually, or I'm not sure how this works, but there's a scholarship now coming out of Simmons College that's specifically for ADOS. Literally, it's for ADOS, and that may be the first ever scholarship specifically for ADOS, right? So definitely want to give his team, his school a shout out for all that work, but also for hosting us next week, next Thursday and Friday. Angela, you're going to be there. I'm going to be there. Tamara's going to be there. I see some folks who are watching who are going to be there. So I'm excited. What are you looking forward to for the conference, Angela?
Oh my God! Every morsel. From the political education to Marianne Williamson and Antonio Moore on that stage, getting those figures right about what we're truly due for. I just want to stress this every opportunity I get because folks act like, oh, slavery and Jim Crow is over. No, reparations is for slavery and accrued, ongoing, systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country that our ancestors built with their lives. Family, be proud to be ADOS because you get a check and you get a check and you get a check. If you do not descend from the slavery in this country, your claim is in the Caribbean islands or in Africa with your colonizers. It is not here. You don't get a check. So wear your ADOS badge proud, family. Our ancestors are going to be in the building in spirit. Okay, so I'm looking forward to that. I am a chatty Cathy. Many of you already know I was born to talk. So Chris, you might have to cut me off, but two things I'm really looking forward to. Okay, I'll finish this thought. Marion Williamson, and there was Cornell West. Woo,
I'm actually looking at I'm actually looking at the schedule right now, and you're right. So on Friday, October 4th, right, we'll start with a registration and sort of an opening session, with the mayor of Louisville. So the mayor of Louisville and Dr. Kevin Cosby are going to open up the show. It looks like on October 4th. That's next Friday, followed by a session on the mission of the conference, which will be delivered by the one and only Yvette Carnell. And then following her will be a presentation on the Black Agenda by Antonio Moore. So we're going to kick off the conference with the mayor of Louisville, with Dr. Kevin Cosby, and then with Yvette talking about what the mission of the conference is, right? Which is going to be really, really important to sort of set the, path forward. And then we're going right into the Black Agenda, which, Angela, the ADOS movement is absolutely 100% focused on delivering a Black agenda and demanding that politicians and government deliver a Black agenda and an ADOS agenda, more specifically, that's targeted specifically to ADOS, and that is the corrective action that we actually need for our ADOS community. So that's how the conference gets kicked off. Following that, well, let me stop there, right? What's your, how do you feel about just that opening?
Well, it's fire. And let me tell you why it's critical. If I can jump in for a couple seconds.
Yes.
Why is it critical, family, to have an ADOS agenda? I just went to Maxine Waters' Census conference this past weekend. Mm-hmm. And what I found out was startling. Okay. When you look at the census in 2010, the Asians, and I need to stress this because I got my notes, family. Just bear with me, Chris. I promise I will be as brief as possible. But this is a perfect opportunity to segue into why a specific ADOS agenda and reparations is a necessity. Yep. So I took notes so I could share with you these stats. At this conference, they had people representing us, one representative for us. They had two representatives for the Hispanic community, and they had one representative for the Asian community. And what I found out was astounding. I found out that Asians get all these different categories: Asian, Indian, Chinese, Filipino, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Native Hawaiian, Guamanian or Chamorro, Samoan, other Pacific Islanders.
Specificity, huh?
Specificity, people. Uh-huh. But and the reason she shared was so that they could understand where the money from the government should flow, because that is what the census is all about, and it's rolling out in 2020. That's why Auntie Max, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, had a conference about it so that we could understand how to get jobs via the census. So they're hiring, family. Make sure you check that out, Census 2020. And if you're in need of work, you absolutely need to apply. They've got jobs paying anywhere from, say, $12 an hour up to like $100,000 a year. So check out the ADOS 2020. But anyway, I digress. So she was speaking specifically about how they have to tier these groups, because if you look at a certain group, you could think that all of them are doing as well as the one. All of them are doing as well as, say, the Japanese, who are maybe worth about, $120,000 in terms of median income. So when you break it out, you get to see that, no, the monies really need to be funneled to the least of these.
Yeah.
And that's what they do to African Americans and Black folk. We get to be rolled into one group. They have one qualifier here. You're either Black, African American, or Negro. When you check that box, that can mean down here that I've got to, hi, Cheryl Van Epps.
Hey, Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl from Vermont.
Yeah, that can mean this. Okay, here in SoCal, based on the color of wealth, Nigerians are worth about $75,000 liquid, but ADOS is worth about $200 liquid comparatively. But I'm getting lumped into the category with Black immigrants whom we love. Hi, Shamika, shout out. Okay. Now, okay. So yeah, we get lumped into this category where Black immigrants are actually, smoking us in terms of median income, in terms of wealth position, the whole 9 yards. So do you see how they get to mask our failure in the country our ancestors built with their lives?
So it's almost, and so let me actually.
Connie.
Hey, Connie, what's up? Hey, Connie, shout out to Connie. Hey, shout out to the whole ADOS SoCal movement. Put it like that. Let's call it a movement for real.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, so, you're raising the point about, the census and how the census is about resources and wealth, right? All good, all great. And hey, we're welcoming David on. Peace, brother. Welcome.
Hi, David.
Peace. So one of the key pieces of the ADOS agenda at ADOS101.com is to have an specific ADOS category on the census, because you're right, Angela, the census is about resources. And right now, the way we collect data on the different demographics and the resources that come from how we collect that data is very, very flawed. One of the recommendations that policymakers are given, and one of the agenda items for the ADOS movement, so just so happens to be that there should be more specificity in terms of how we collect data and how we allocate resources based on how we collect data. So an ADOS category is absolutely necessary. And some of us, for example, here in Sacramento, let's use us as an example. We have been pushing our city government itself to start to collect data very specifically for ADOS. Right now, we don't collect data specifically, right? We have these sort of catch-all umbrella categories that really do mask ADOS failure, right? And really, but what's even, how does that matter in real life, right? It does more than mask. It means that the policies and the resources that come and the tangibles don't come to the benefit of ADOS partly because we're not collecting data in the right way. And so one of the things that folks in different cities, but hopefully the federal government does, is start to collect data specifically for specific ethnic and racial groups based on country of origin. That is absolutely crucial, I think, to at least moving us a little bit closer to closing the lineage wealth gap, which is really, which is one of the core objectives of the ADOS movement. Do you want to follow up on that?
Absolutely. And to bring that all the way around, we did get an opportunity to exchange information with Congresswoman Maxine Waters, scheduler. And we're planning to have a sit down because Maxine Waters was astonished when the ADOS stood up and stressed what's happening when we don't have these distinct groups, how we remain the legs of the table that everyone else gets to eat from. Another astonishing fact was that Hispanics can claim white in the census. So their numbers get to be bolstered up. White people's numbers get to be bolstered up by the Hispanics who claim to be white. And also, we get underrepresented as ADOS because, using LA again, we're 6% of the population, and yet we're 40% on Skid Row. Yeah. So, what I was stressing and what Maxine was stressing at the census conference is that you can't even get an accurate accounting of our numbers if we're 40% of the homeless or working homeless living in their cars.
Yeah.
It is problematic. So our numbers are understated while the white number grows because the Hispanics claim to be white in the census. And that's where the resources and the policies are being funneled. And
Yeah.
so our numbers continue to dwindle.
So let me actually follow up on that, and I definitely want to bring David in here, and to provide some feedback. David, we're talking about the ADOS conference that's coming up next week, October 4th through 5th, and we're going through the agenda for the conference. I actually have it in front of me here, and we're at the portion of the conference agenda where there's going to be a presentation on the Black agenda. A census category for ADOS is one of the key core items on the ADOS agenda. But following that presentation by Antonio, which should be between 9:30 and 10:30 next Friday, following right after that, and this segues perfect to what you were just alluding to, Angela, is a Q&A on budgetary process with Congressman John Yarmouth and with Yvette Carnell. So following the ADOS agenda discussion, we're going to go right into a Q&A and some discussion and learning with a sitting congressman and with Yvette Carnell to talk about budgetary process. The census is very much related to the budget, obviously, right? And
yes,
this I think could be one of the most important pieces of the conference, quiet as kept, because knowing budget process, or at least beginning to learn about budget process, whether it be at the federal, state, local level, is very, 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 very important. If you do any local work, right? If you do any local political work, right, you find out very quickly that your city budget and your county budget and your state budgets and even the federal budget, the federal government budget, one, they're all very much connected, and two, that is where a lot of the fight is. Okay, that's where a lot of the fight is gonna be. It's gonna be on budget. I'll give you an example. Here in Sacramento, we are currently in the process of figuring out how we're going to change the way the city of Sacramento does its budgeting, how we're going to change the way the city of Sacramento invests in Black ADOS neighborhoods, and who this city is going to be based on how we and how we spend our resources. And believe you me, I mean, that's a fight like none other. So budget is super, super important. David, do you have any thoughts on how important the budget is and knowing basic budget process is?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention that, and I still haven't found this sociologist's name, but there's a book that came out about 4 years ago, and it was about 4 years after Michelle Alexander wrote her book, The New Jim Crow. And the book is called Invisible Men, and the subtitle is The Myth of Black Progress. And what this is a sociologist, I think she's from the University of Washington State. And she wrote a book about the fact that the government statistics, by and large, do not include incarcerated people, right? And frequently do not include incarcerated people, particularly even after they get out of prison.
Wow.
So ex-offenders are not on the statistical calculus of of all of the decision making that you're talking about. They are underrepresented on the census. They're underrepresented in every other aspect of of policy decision making. And what she is arguing is that because African American men are so, and ADOS men for that matter, are so overrepresented in that category. I mean, vastly overrepresented. Yeah. That there are two things that are happening. One is, of course, that millions of people are not getting to vote, right? That's one thing. So they're being stripped of their right of self-determination just in that way alone. And then secondly, they create a myth of Black progress.
Yes.
The elimination of them from any statistical evaluation, it creates the idea that African Americans, and particularly as you're saying, ADOS folks, are because the bottom, the economic bottom of the community is invisible, doesn't count. There is a myth of progress. And when she does her calculations, she finds that there really has been, statistically, virtually no progress.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I think that's right. And not only does that matter to, one, the fact that you have millions of folks who are, not participating in the political process and not being able to express their human right to self-determination, but that has an effect and that has an impact on the budget, right? That has an impact on how resources are allocated, and that's another reason why. That's another reason why, I think this part of the ADOS conference is going to be important. Angela, did you have some thoughts on that too?
Absolutely. I mean, just to your point, it's easy for the people at large to not rally behind our justice claim because of this egregious failure to isolate the ADOS from the rest of the groups. But that's beneficial to government, right? Because it's not just about the dollars. It's about the policies, the legislation. And although we are supposed to be a protected class, it's never been reinforced. None of it's been enforced. And so it makes it very easy when you put a poll out there to people who ask, should the ADOS receive reparations? There's a predominant resounding no to that, especially amongst the candidates who are running for office, with the exception of Marianne Williamson, who has been on our repair since '97 when she wrote the book, Healing the Soul of America, the Heart and Soul of America. So this is why it's so easy for Barack Obama to say no to reparations. Because what I found at that Census conference and the meeting prior with Representative Karen Bass, there is just such a chasm between what is happening on the ground and what is happening on the Hill. I mean, Maxine Waters was mortified when I shared with her just the tiny information about the Nigerians' $75,000 liquid to the ADOS 200 liquid, and the fact that we're 6% here and 40% of the homeless population. There was something that went off in her that made her go in hard on the people that were there to give information about the jobs. And they could not break out statistically why they weren't responding to our online applications, why we weren't getting calls back. And they had one Hispanic recruiter and one Black recruiter. But everything has been centered here in SoCal around DACA and making sure the Hispanics are okay, while driving the ADOS out of Southern California for these very reasons. Our failure is being masked by the success of Black immigrants when you lump us all together, and we don't have that distinction on the census, and now we have to wait 10 more years for that to happen. Yeah, well, that part, I think, of the discussion is going to be powerful, right? Because you're talking Black agenda, you're talking ADOS
category as you know, one of the most important pieces of the ADOS agenda. You know, as the conference moves forward, though, you know, following the talk about the budgetary process with John Harmuth and with Yvette Carnell, you know, we move into a session called "Continuing the Struggle for Freedom" with none other than Dr. Cornel West. Okay, so Dr. Cornel West is also coming to the ADOS conference. I think he's scheduled to be there at 11 on Friday. So next Friday. Angela, you have a friend here.
I do. Hi, with a friend.
And
Thanks for joining.
No problem, right? So continuing the struggle for freedom. I see the ADOS movement as, you know, one of the newer iterations in the struggle for freedom that we've all been a part of for hundreds of years, right? That's how I see it. I see this as, you know, I don't know if you want to call it the fourth installment of the civil rights movement or something completely new, you know, that's
Yeah.
but whatever you want to call it, you know, I see us as a continuation and a next step, a 21st century step into the struggle for freedom. What do you guys think?
David, I'll let you go and then I'll go. Well, I just wanted to add something because many people on the broadcast have heard me speak of Theodore William Allen, Ted Allen, and his book, The Invention of the White Race. I want to point out that Ted Allen wrote a long essay on the census, on the history of the census.
Really? Okay.
And you can get that essay online. It's accessible through an online journal that may be out of print now, but I think it should be available, called Cultural Logic.
Okay.
And it's
I'm taking notes.
clogic.org. But the easiest place is probably to go through jeffreyBperry.net. That's Jeff Perry's website, Jeffrey, JeffreyBperry.net. And if you go there and look at he's got almost everything that was published, that Ted Allen published. Jeff is Ted's literary executor, as well as the biographer of Hubert Harrison, who was a crucial figure in the early 20th century Harlem. Harrison didn't call it the Renaissance. He thought it was. He wrote a publication called The New Negro.
That sounds very familiar. Yeah.
And Harrison is one of the prime movers of the blacks in the early 20th century. He is in the Socialist Party. He quits the Socialist Party over white supremacy. He becomes the editor of Marcus Garvey's newspaper. He quits Marcus Garvey. I mean, he is really, very much an independent. He's the soapbox orator. In fact, he used to speak on the street corners in Harlem. He's the generation before Malcolm. When Malcolm began to do that in the 1950s, he was modeling on Hubert Harrison. And so Hubert Harrison is a very important figure. Jeff, in effect, resurrected him because he was completely buried. But Jeff is also worked very, very closely with Ted Allen. And Ted made him, when Ted died in 2005, Jeff became his literary executor. So all of Ted's writings are on Jeff's website at jeffreybperry.net. That's a long way of saying that there is a really interesting essay by Ted on the census, specifically on the census, and going through all of the politics of social control, the way that the census is used for social control. On the other hand, I would also point out that one of the things that troubles me about particularly the way that Angela is talking about ADOS is that I feel a bit like, instead of reaching out for for comrades, for solidarity, and I understand that this is a tightrope you guys got to walk. It's not me, it's you, but the tightrope is between singling out and identifying, the people who are, ADOS, and and at the same time reaching out, right? So there's kind of like a separation and identification, but at the same time, I think there also needs to be, for particularly for people of color, a reaching out in solidarity. For European Americans, I think the issue is that we have to get in touch with our class position, and that, in other words, every time there is a working class person who is systematically denied their right to vote, for example, through some kind of structural thing that's going on, it weakens the power of all working people to be able to exercise, to fight for their interests, right? So you have millions of people who are denied the right to vote, for example, by these felony exclusions, even if they're not, written into law, as exclusions. The whole system is set up to prevent working people from getting their more than just their fair share, from exercising their power over capital through local, state, and federal government, right?
Okay, right.
You want to respond to that?
David, I have to respond to that. David, with all due respect, this is a tough topic.
Sign already. Whenever somebody says, "with all due respect,"
because I really don't know, when my people are on fire, how not to be passionate about my people specifically. What I am finding is that we have been used as the mules of the Democratic Party for 60 years, and we are in the fight to prevent from becoming the permanent underclass in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Let me explain. We are on fire. We're on fire. And it's very difficult for me to give this to white people, Black immigrants, Hispanics. It's very difficult for me, knowing the condition of my people, knowing what we've been doing in this country, to cloak it in a peppermint for you guys. I do my best to manage my enthusiasm, but I am who I am. I have found my tribe. I have found my cause. And I don't have the bandwidth to care about white people or poor white people or the working homeless or at large. I've got to give the energy to ADOS because we can look at where we are to see that our energy has been spent all over the place worrying about everyone else. And we are $200 liquid in Southern California. So yes, I'm trying to be respectful. I'm trying to contain myself. I don't mean to exclude anyone, but there's no easy or nice way to say this. It's not easy, it's not nice.
You don't need to, and so first of all, I do want to say shout out to Jacaranda. I hope I'm saying that name right. Thanks for the shout out. Tara, also, thanks for the shout out as well. Those are the folks commenting and watching right now. Yeah. I wanted to follow up with what you said, Angela. So, and Tara, you're right. We have been here for 400 years. So, I don't think you need to apologize, Angela, or even contain yourself. I think let me just give you where I am. I don't care how it sounds. I don't care how it makes people feel. I care about the fact that 200 feet from me right now where I'm sitting, there's a homeless camp with a bunch of ADOS to my left. 200 feet to my right, there's a homeless camp with ADOS there. Last weekend, we went to the one on my left and gave out 100 bottles of water. That means there's about 100 people out there. Okay, we gave out as many, 30 bags of supplies because that's how many we had. This is, this may be jarring and off-putting to some, but we don't have the time nor the luxury to care about how it makes people feel or how it turns some people off. Those who know the struggle and know what we're fighting for are going to ride with us, and those who don't won't. And alliances and coalitions got to be based on tangibles, and it got to be a two-way street. It got to be beneficial to both parties. And so until we get to a point where we are exchanging in our allyship and not just having it go one way, then I don't care how it makes people feel, and I don't care how it sounds. From the politics perspective, every group that's successful and that's good at politics is unapologetic, is agenda-driven, and is specific to their group. And that's what we're doing. That's what our generation is doing. That's what this ADOS movement is doing. That's what we're going to continue to do. And it's working, it's growing, and it's producing some real effects. And I think the effects in the future will be much, much greater, right? I think we're going to actually achieve reparations in my lifetime. That's
absolutely.
That's what I'm working towards. We've got the ADOS conference coming up, right? Following Dr. Cornel West's talk, continuing the struggle for freedom, we go right into a Q&A with Marianne Williamson, which I think is sort of co-hosted or produced by Antonio Moore. So we're having a real effect in the real world, right? This is the first conference. We've got a presidential candidate. We've got mayors. We've got Congress people. We've got all sorts of powerful, positive things happening. That's going to be our focus, right? That is what we care about, right? And that's all we have time for, really. Angela, you've I think worked more closely with Marianne Williamson's,
yes.
Folks. I know she had some people at the ADOS SoCal town hall, which was not too long ago, and I thought that was a great town hall. She is right now somewhere near the bottom of the presidential candidates, polls and all that stuff, right? Yes. And there's a debate coming up on October 15th. I don't. And shout out to you, Connie, unapologetically, ADOS, absolutely. Fam, do not be bullied. Do not be shamed
into believing that ADOS first is a problematic.
Your chest, right? Like, there's a story out yesterday, and I want to connect this to the Marianne Williamson part of the conference. But there's a story out yesterday. I think if it's not the Wall Street Journal, it's CNBC, one of these sort of financial news outlets, saying that, hey, there's some chatter among the Wall Street donors that, hey, if the Democratic Party elects Elizabeth Warren, they're going to sit out, they're going to not participate, or they're going to support Trump. Okay, that's a specific group of people, okay, doing unapologetic, specific advocacy. That is the way politics is done, and that's the way we're gonna do politics. And if it turns out some people, that's just what it's gonna have to be, because Angela, you said it perfectly. Not just the house is on fire, we on fire. There is no
on
house.
fire. The people are on fire. There is no house.
We walking around on fire. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so to have Marianne Williamson come to the conference, speak specifically to ADOS, I want to shout her out. She has been speaking specifically to at least some parts of her campaign to ADOS. Obviously, we have a big issue with her reparations number, right? The number that she's talking about is way too low. It doesn't get the job done. But part of the job of specific advocacy and unapologetic advocacy is, one, to have candidates forced to speak specifically to us, which is what we've been doing and doing a damn good job at. I want to shout out all the ADOS out there who've been working online and offline. We've been doing a damn good job, family. We've been doing a damn good job, right? I mean, every single one of us is in the history books. Every single one of us, just off the work that we've done in the past 6 months, year, 2 years. But part of the fruits of specific, unapologetic, agenda-driven, politically independent advocacy is that you get to pull a presidential candidate to your conference and then have them speak specifically to your issues. I want to ask.
Can I jump in there, Chris, real quick? I'd like to ask David, what does he think about the fact that Marianne Williamson is the only presidential candidate to accept an invitation to our inaugural conference?
Well, I'm look. The first thing I want to say is that I apologize for the way that I presented my case before. This is not your responsibility, what I'm talking about. It's my responsibility, all right? I think your responsibility is to shout to the rooftops, right? And I have to deal with the fallout, right? Whatever happens. So what I'm trying to do is frame these issues in a way that I think can get through to white working class people, right? That really has nothing to do with you. And so I want to get out of the way, all right? The first thing I want to do is get out of the way, all right? And then just to say that that's what I'm looking at is how to frame this in a way that I can build solidarity. And the way that I can build solidarity.
You really quickly, and just on this point about white working class solidarity. Let's look at. So let me offer you some information that I think would help. So right now, if you look at, let's talk about income and class, right? If you look at ADOS versus, let's say, white households that are what we call poor, right? So let's talk about poor whites versus poor ADOS, right? Even the poorest of ADOS, according to the work from Dr. William Sandy Darity with the Color of Law, the Color of Wealth data reports, even the poorest whites still are wealthier than the poorest blacks. For example, if you take an ADOS-led household that is working full-time, right? And a household that's led by a white high school dropout has more wealth than an ADOS-led household that's working full-time, right? Okay, that is clear evidence that white poor is not the same as black poor.
Absolutely.
Okay? And that is something that I think the white working class or that group that you're talking about, I think that's information that group needs to know, that you may think you're the bottom, right? But you're actually not the bottom. ADOS is at the bottom. And the question then becomes, how do you, as a privileged, and because it's not just the fact that you're wealthier, you're also white, okay? Which is a big difference too, right? that matters too, right? That comes with all kind of social capital, right? And all kinds of, highly, favored cultural capital too, right? So it's, how do white working poor and poor whites, if they're going to support this movement, that's information that they need to have. Obviously, that's not support that we, that's absolutely necessary to what we're doing. We're going to fight this fight and win this fight no matter what. But I think that's information that's important to that group. And sorry, I'll let you finish.
Well, Ted Allen used to say that that he was in favor of revolution, and a minority revolution is better than no revolution at all. That was his terminology. But you are absolutely right. I think that the system is, the social control system in this country, which maintains the power of the ruling elite, going back to the period in the Virginia plantation colony in the late 17th and early 18th century, figured out this system whereby the rights of Englishmen were turned into the rights of white people. They invented white people, right? Before that time, and I think it's really important that people be familiar with this argument that Ted Allen made. It's based on 25 years of research that he did into the colonial records. And what he says is that there were no white people here until the end of the 17th century. In other words, 75 years after the founding of Jamestown was when that term, actually the use of the term, evolved, and it was on the basis of a revolution that took place in 1676. It's an easy date to remember because it's 100 years before the Declaration of Independence. But that revolution was made up of European Americans and African Americans whose status, get this, Ted calls indeterminate, that there were people who were African American and European American who were chattel slaves together, not just indentured servants. They were chattel. And the second state
there were European chattel. I haven't seen any evidence of that. I need to see the.
That's what I'm talking about. Now that is just to say that the status of white was something that was invented rather than existed somehow naturally, normally, or is based on genetics or anything like that. It was. But if you go into jeffreybperry.net, you will find some summaries of Ted's book. It's a 2-volume book. People don't want to read it. There are one or two essays that will. Anyway, the point I'm making here is that the status was that of white turned what were the rights of Englishmen into white privileges. All right.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But I need to see the receipts on the
slavery, white slaves. I need to see receipts on white slaves.
I've
never heard of that.
Never heard of that. And that is not part of this fight, right? And obviously, we were just talking about the part of the conference that Dr. Cornel West is going to be giving, which is called the continuing the struggle for freedom, right? That's what Dr. Cornel West is going to be talking about at the conference, right? So, in the long struggle for freedom, right? ADOS, those people who would become ADOS in the 1500s and the 1600s and the 1700s, right?
Before America
there was an America, right? The people that created what we call the United States of America, or what would become it, that's our lineage. That's who we come from, right? And so what I don't want to happen is, a sort of, mixing of the idea that there were also Europeans who suffered the same type of chattel, slavery. I haven't seen any evidence for that, and I also know that that's also something that's used sometimes by opponents of reparations to crowbar, as the good brother Tariq Nasheed says, crowbar other groups onto the reparations claim, and also to dilute the reparations claim. That's not going to happen. We are a specific group with a specific justice claim. Well, we are, and shout out to Otis, to the good brother Otis, who says whiteness was invented and codified into law in response to constant rebellions along the Virginia, North Carolina border. Absolutely right, and shout out to the good brother Otis, who's always dropping the heat and bringing the knowledge. And so, but I just want to finish the point that this is our lineage, this is our claim, this is who we are. No other group went through what we went through. You may be able to find specific examples, exceptions here and there. I don't think you'll find many, if any at all. But only ADOS were chattel slaves.
Can we get Connie Collins' comment? Oh God.
Yeah, sorry, Connie. Put your comment back up. I actually wanted to read your comment, Connie.
Yeah, that went way too fast. Oh, thank you.
Angela, you want to take it?
Yes, white slaves were indentured only, not chattel. They still had same rights as free white people. They could walk the streets freely after work, date, marry, not have their families sold off, acquire property, etc. Once they served their time, paid off their debt, they were free. Thank you, Connie.
Right on, Connie. And
if David has something to the contrary.
Second here, that is true after the end of the 17th century, when the ruling class, when the Virginia planters devised this system of white privilege. It is not true before. And that's all that I'm saying, that this is actually a historically constituted social control force. That is, the white race is a historically constituted social control force. And Black people, ADOS folks, have to be on the bottom. There is no other way for the system to work.
I agree with that.
So I agree with that. You have a situation in which the working class in the United States is sliced and diced.
No, it's absolutely true.
It's not simply that we are separate. We are separate and unequal. All right.
Absolutely.
Equality is crucial for understanding, so that you have, if you want to just break it down to a binary, between black and white, you have of workers who is both exploited and oppressed. All right. Oppression and exploitation are not the same thing.
But they're also still.
Let me finish a minute. Just let me finish the thought. All right. And another group, European, who come out of European American descent, who are exploited and privileged, socially privileged. Both groups are exploited. One group is an oppressed group. The other group is a privileged group in terms of power relations between themselves.
That doesn't match the reality of that doesn't match reality, based in part on the data that I just gave you. If you look at the poorest of whites, they're still
wealthier,
way more wealthy than the poorest of ADOS. And as a matter of fact, if you take a household that's led by a white high school dropout, they have more wealth than a household that's led by an ADOS, where the head of the household has a college degree, where the head of the household is working full time, where the head of the household has a 2-parent family and all that stuff. So So that doesn't match the.
Everything that I'm saying is agreeing with you about that. I'm simply saying that that is not something that is the result of the actions of these working class whites. It is this.
Beneficiaries, though.
All right, it's the result. Let me just finish here. It is the result of maintaining a system of social control. All right, for the ruling elite, for the interests of the ruling elite. I think I've said this to Tamara, that poor whites are poor not in spite of their white privileges, but because of their white privileges. All right.
How is that possible? I mean, again, even if you're talking poor white, they're still 10, 20, 30 times more wealthy than ADOS. And so it's not a function of class here. This is not a function of class. Even those poor whites are still white, and they still reap huge benefits from being white in this system of social control, as you put it. They're still white. They still reap those benefits. You can be poor as hell and white and still have more wealth than an ADOS who's working full time, who has a college degree. So, and to be honest,
we are talking past each other.
Class structure. We don't have a middle class at all. We are flat. We are completely flat as a group. So it's not a function of class here, and that's one of the key arguments of the ADOS movement and folks on the left.
You cannot fix race with class-based policies.
Right. This is thank you.
And I'm saying,
and we are
in the last. Okay, and we got 3 minutes, and I want to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
We cannot fix race with class-based policies.
Absolutely.
And I cannot be concerned about class until ADOS is made whole, until we are repaired. Visit ADOS101.com. When that happens, then we can focus on the tide lifting all the rest of the boats. ADOS don't need to be made equal here. ADOS needs an advantage. We, the people, are on fire. We're on fire. I can't even think about class right now because that's where all the concentration has been.
So we got
to the table everybody else eats from. Go ahead.
So we got 2 minutes left. This is to me this is a fire discussion. Okay. And I
want to thank David because he's in the hot seat. I want to thank you, David, for your apology. I want to thank you for being present because not everybody is built for this. And I thank you for at least working very hard with us to reach an understanding of where the differences are. Chris?
And one thing I want to finish up on this class point. Folks on the left, especially the white left, need to pay attention. We're making a very, very sharp critique of the way that the left is moving right now. This is something, I think this is a historic moment for the left, because you have a group of the actual bottom, right? I don't know what you call it, what is it, the proletariat or whatever you want to call it in terms of the left's, own sort of way of talking about it. You have the actual bottom of the group, the people that the left is supposed to be focused on, saying, hey, you're going about this the wrong way. It's not a function of class. This is not a class thing. This is a race thing. And even those poor non-ADOS participate and benefit from a system of white supremacy that keeps ADOS at the bottom. We're making the case that even poor whites are complicit. All right, even poor non-ADOS are complicit and benefit from the system. So I think we should probably stop there because it sounds like we're all in agreement there.
I want to thank our audience. Thank you, ADOS and allies, for joining.
Yes,
thank you, Tamara, for allowing us to do another takeover. We'll see you guys in Louisville, Kentucky, the 4th and the 5th. So excited. Also, look for live streaming. David, there will be a segment on the agenda where they're going to talk with our white allies to share ways in which you can help us move for reparations and ADOS tangibles. Thank you again. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, family.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Chris. That was really, really powerful.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And
thank you.
Well,
yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. We're signing off now.
We'll see you guys.
Day. We'll see you after the conference, David, for more conversation and exchange. Power to the people.
Bye, guys. Thanks, man.